The lifeline in palmistry, perhaps the most major palmar line, begins at the palm's edge in between the thumb and the forefinger and can originate in several different places, high up on the palm or low down closer towards the thumb, and works its way down towards the wrist. And it's in this direction that we read this line. So I'm going to explain what the origins, the various different origins of the lifeline mean in this video. In another video I have already created, I have described the meanings behind the major palmar lines, major palmar markings like squares, lines reaching upwards in the various different places and what they mean, lines reaching out with various markings on them, and you can check out that video, and I've time-stamped all of these markings as well, so it's really easy. If you've got one or two of these, you can just check out that video and just cherry pick the information you need. Now, a lifeline that begins high up on the palm, as actually this one does in this image, it represents someone who has very sort of Jupiterian qualities, very ambitious, prideful, self-centered perhaps, highly determined. And this is because it starts in Jupiter, and Jupiter is the place of ambition and ego and decision-making, authority, judgment. And so the person's life is sort of almost aimed or coming from these sorts of traits. And so they will be a highly ambitious and determined person. They will be likely a strong achiever. However, it may be at the detriment to others around them. And a high lifeline like this, it almost has the effect of enlarging the inner Mars area. And inner Mars is this area of drive and aggression and motivation. And it's the place of determination. And so the two sort of go hand in hand. You have a lifeline that begins in a very sort of Jupiterian place, and it's enhanced by this drive. So the higher up the lifeline begins on the palm, the more self-centered, the more prideful, the more single-minded the person's approach to life will be. Now, when the lifeline begins lower down, closer to the thumb, the opposite will be the case, because inner Mars is now weakened, and so the drive and determination to get ahead in life is not quite as strong, and the person may be satisfied with not reaching quite such a high station in life, and the interest in themselves will be low, and the drive to achieve will also be low. The sort of person that won't enjoy drawing attention to themselves and becoming a leader of any sort in any sort of social situation, and they won't like making decisions on behalf of others. They'll probably be quite likely happy following and quite sort of satisfied with not achieving great wealth. There's always a pro and a con. There's always good and bad, because whilst this person might not have extreme sort of drive and ambition, they are generally considerate people and likely quite sort of generous, whereas someone who has a lifeline that begins more up here, it will be able to achieve, will be able to lead quite naturally, but they may not well be as considerate and compassionate. The most desirable lifeline to have, arguably, is a lifeline that begins in between the thumb and the forefinger, just in the center, and it creates this sort of balance in between having enough ambition and desire to achieve, as well as being considerate enough towards others. And when we measure from the very beginning of this lifeline, it's from here that we can truly determine the scale of the lifeline, and from there begin to time events on the lifeline accurately. And this is how it's truly done. And I don't do this very often, because I'm not very often sent images of the sides of the palm, and it's quite difficult to do this when you're not in person anyway. And what the beginning of the lifeline shows us As far as Terry Stokes is concerned, he calls this the lines of demarcation, and this is where the lifeline sort of forms in its beginning. And you'll notice two lines forming together to make one line, and this is what he calls the lines of demarcation. And in Indian palmistry, one is said to represent the mother and one is said to represent the father. Now, some Indian schools of thought read the mother line as the line below and the father line as the line above, and the two come together and create the person. And that, in a way, it makes sense, the father line being closer to Jupiter. Jupiter is more sort of masculine qualities. And in palmistry, a weak third phalanx of Jupiter, where we begin to see a gap between the first two fingers, it shows a weak relationship with the father. And again, in Apollo as well, we see the relationship with the mother, because Apollo is more feminine qualities. And so these two fingers do represent and can tell us relationship issues with the parents. And Mercury as well. Mercury shows us how we cope with both of our parents, the relationship with both of our parents, how we, our abilities to express and communicate our feelings are a direct result of our upbringing and our relationships with our parents. And so the beginning of the lifeline directly correlates to the development of the fingers. And that's interesting to me, because the fingers are the first things to form in the womb, and then at 8 weeks the lifeline is begins to form straight after the fingers begin to form. It's the first line on the palm that begins to form. And this really shows us that this theory, that the flexor lines, if you like, as they're sometimes referred to as, are not formed, as the name suggests. They're not formed because of the hand flexing. The hand isn't flexing when it develops in the womb, and yet the line itself begins to form, the lifeline begins to form, and it's a direct pattern, an imprint of our parents' lives. So the lifeline itself is represents our parents' life more than ours to begin with. And as we progress, as we develop our own thoughts and ideas and feelings, and respond to our environment, the lifeline begins to change. Very, very slowly it begins to change. The lifeline represents our environment, as well as our health and our vitality, our constitution and our immune system. It's how we push through all of the elements that are against us. So these two lines that come together to form the lifeline, the lines of demarcation, the father and the mother, they should be ideally evenly spaced apart and running for the same amount of time. And any kind of weakness or failing or obstacles will show us an indication of anomalies with our relationship with that parent. So for more information on the lifeline, please have a look at my how to read lifeline video I've already created. And my next video on the lifeline will be timing events on the lifeline, because this is a particularly tricky conversation to have. It's probably one of the most argued about and difficult tasks in palmistry. Palmists continually disagree on how to do this. Everyone's got their own way of doing it. I've got my own way that works for me. I tend not to be too accurate, or try to be too accurate, because I don't want to let anyone down. So I tend to just sort of guesstimate roughly down to within a few years. But there are times when I can be much more accurate than that. And there are other methods that we can use alongside scaling down and timing events on the lifeline and the fate line as well. And that can add to the accuracy of predicting and timing events in palmistry. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. And as I say, please check out my other video. It's all time stamped. So it's easy to find out the information you need. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.